afternoon. The following session, titled Teaching Music in a Classical Lutheran School Curriculum and Culture, will be presented by Nichole, Busarow, who is a wife and mother of 4 boys and who has served churches and schools in Michigan and Indiana. Please welcome Mrs. Busarow.
Thank you. So nice to see some faces that I know, and those of you I don't, I hope to get to talk to you. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you today on a topic that is dear to me, and that is classical Lutheran music education. Allow me to share a little bit about how I came to be interested in this topic. I was drawn to music from a young age, active in church children's choirs, handbell choirs, played instruments for divine service, went on to study church music at the undergraduate and graduate levels. There was no school at the parish where I grew up. I went to what I thought was a decent public school, involved in every ensemble I could join, but had no desire to be a music educator. I mean, I loved my elementary music teacher. They're usually pretty likable people. I loved my middle school and high school ensemble directors. They even told me I should go into music education, but no. For me, it was church music. That was my love. And as we know, God's ways are not our ways. And I find myself at my first parish, and through a miscommunication that could only happen in a parochial school, I find myself unknowingly as the K-8 music teacher. At that time, I was wishing I had had some of that instruction on general music education, and I felt woefully unprepared. I knew one thing, however. I wanted them to sing good music, music that confessed the faith, sturdy music, soul-stirring music, music that stood the test of time, things that were beautiful about the one who is good through and through. I wanted to foster a culture of young people singing in the divine service, singing music that was worthy of being sung again and again, music that put scripture into their mouths and their hearts and into the congregation's ears and hearts, music that was Jesus, music that was appropriate for their voices and adorned the service with beauty and reverence. You may not be surprised, or you might be surprised to know that I came up against many challenges to this school. Everywhere I went, the curriculum, whether from a Christian publishing house or not, was unsatisfying. It didn't have the scope of what it meant to be human via music. Also tied into a liturgical element, pretty soon I realized I was looking for some sort of Gesamtkunstwerk. Okay? I hadn't been seeking to be a music educator, but I realized that being a church musician meant leading the youngest of us in song. And that means teaching. So now I'm into teaching, all ages, babies through adults. And then I came across this thing called classical Lutheran education. And this sounds like it's going to be it, right? After all, music is part of the quadrivium. But then I heard of classical schools that had exactly the same kind of music education, or worse, that I had seen. Maybe using silver burdette and then making sure the kids also sing about Jesus. I didn't understand how in literature the students could read the classics, but in music, they sang junk. Other people had composer studies, yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Exposure to masterworks, yes, like it very much. Music theory, oh sure, it's helpful to an extent. Playing a tin whistle? Know this? You're laughing, you know it. Okay. Okay, but why? Yes, that was the question. Why music education in our Lutheran schools? I learned that the medieval quadrivium dealt with the speculative and mathematical aspects of music, philosophical. So it made sense that Luther, while still affirming its importance, shifted the focus to musica practica, those things that belong to music composed, performed, shared, experienced. Music was particularly useful in terms of the worship life of the church, but I struggle with a sense of usefulness. God's gift of music also has implications for our whole lives, for who we are as people. God made us musical people. It's part of what it means to be human. You can't tell me I can't sing, or I appreciate people who have the gift of music. If classical education is also focused on what it means to be human, then music is a critical piece of that education. What we need from a classical Lutheran musical education is simply an approach to music that matches what we do in other humane categories: grammar, language, reading, literature, history, art, Lutheran catechesis, even physical training. While I was going through training for my work with the Fort Wayne Children's Choir early childhood education, I came across this idea from John Feierabend that finally hit the multidimensional aspect of music for me. In each lesson, the students need to do, each lesson is 3 things. Students need to do music, learn about music, and enjoy music. This rang true to me. It was part of what was lacking in the other things I had seen. Maybe part of it was there, other parts were not. But for me, as the Lutheran Christian, I knew that all these things, doing music, learning about music, enjoying music, were because of God's gifts to me through Christ. Why do you need this kind of music education? Well, the scriptures command us to sing. By following his commands, we love the Lord our God. We are to love the Lord with all ourselves, all our heart, mind, and strength. And yet our voice touches on something very visceral and something very spiritual: our bodies and our souls. Feierabend has a phrase that he wants every child to be tuneful, beatful, that's not a real word, and artful. Tuneful, meaning having a rich background of tunes they know well. Beatful, being able to keep a steady beat and to synchronize that with others. And artful, meaning to find human expression, beauty, and goodness in music. And to all of that I say, amen. Me too. I pray for such an education that forms the body and the soul. Tuneful, beatful, artful, and in all faithful. By singing, we love the Lord our God and we love our neighbors. Love for neighbor is the culture created and passed down, that traditio. And I'll come back to get into this again later. But we see in this church culture singing members of our churches, raising up musicians to lead song in our churches, not just professionals, but laity that lead song in their homes, families that sing hymns. And how about raising up laity that will sing in parish choirs? I bet we all know a church choir that could use a few more voices. But also culture outside the church. Enjoyment of music made and heard, dancing and merrymaking, families that sing together in the car or around a fire, parents and siblings who sing to babies. And singing to babies, crying, can't help myself. I know this talk is about teaching music in the school, but I must say a word about preschool, toddler, infant, even the in utero phases. We know how formative, how important, how critical our homes are for our children, our families, our society. The formation of a person happens there in that atmosphere of education Charlotte Mason talks about. A child's education does not begin with formal lessons, and we know how critical the love and care of parents are in forming that child's mind, body, and soul from the very beginning. Brain research backs this up. Social science research backs this up. God has placed us in families. He has designed marriage, a man and a woman to come together, and a woman's womb is the child's first home. Infants here in the womb. Christians know and believe this as they profess that John the Baptist leaped in the womb of his mother when he heard Mary's greeting. They hear words and songs in the womb, and when they're born, they take in air and they find their voice. They can cry, and they grow and begin to make other sounds and coos. Pitches are explored, words are formed, humming happens, bits and pieces begin to come together, both in text and song. Toddlers break out in unintelligent song. Children talk, children sing. It is a God-given wonder and gift. Yet we've almost lost this beauty in our society. There is not enough singing, and our children suffer. Children grow up and have children of their own, and what do they sing to them? What tunes do they know? Now, in the church, thank God that we have songs to sing to them. But are we accustomed to singing ourselves? By ourselves? It's really dismal. 20th century Hungarian music education reformer and musicologist Zoltán Kodály said that a child's music education begins not just 9 months before he's born, but 9 months before his mother was born. That is to say that his mother needs to have been formed in the womb through the beats, pitches, and melodies created by her mother's body. She must be given musical language, given songs to hear, songs to sing, that then in time she's able to pass on to her children. Thanks be to God that Christians have these songs to sing, that in our churches singing is robust and frequent, because in our society, singing is too often left to the professionals. At best, the average adult sings in the car, the shower, but we're merely consumers. The church and the Christian home must be places for communal singing, where music is made, flowing out of our very bodies and souls. Allow me to recap here. If you can speak, you can sing. It is a natural thing to do, although in our world done rather unnaturally at times, it's becoming less so. To be human is to sing. To be a Christian is to sing. To be a Lutheran is to sing in parts. God commands us to sing. The angels sing. Heaven and earth join together in the song of the songs. We don't know exactly what heaven will be like, but we know there will be singing. And as I tell my students, we might as well start practicing now. Singing bonds us together and delights the soul. As Edward Taylor says in his 1930s manual, A Christian Pedagogy, by all means, let us develop in our pupils the love for singing. Let us have more singing, that we may have fewer sinning children. And so when we ask the curriculum question, what should we teach? I believe it must be centered on song. Helen Kemp, maybe you know this name, and if you don't, you should. She had a great little vocal warm-up that went, body, mind, spirit, voice. It takes the whole person to sing and rejoice. To me, song takes expression in 3 ways: making song, hearing song, reading song. So this, along with doing music, learning about music, and enjoying music, are how I arrange my curriculum in each lesson that I teach. So for the first, making song. Of primary importance is teaching students to use their singing voices. The voice is the first instrument you have. You always carry it around with you. Students should use their singing voices a lot. We know hymns and psalms and spiritual songs, but folk songs and singing games, partner songs and canon and choral literature, vocal exercises, yes, sing them all. Sing the best there are. I don't really have time for bad music. I think you know how to find these elements of the curriculum, and if you don't, there's many people here you can talk to about that. But a large part of this singing is singing hymns. And we've heard a lot about that at this conference, which is wonderful. Outside of the music classroom, too, sing songs about math facts, grammar, geography, history, Latin. classroom teachers and parents, not just music teachers, need to sing and lead singing. I believe that Luther quote, something like, he has no regard for the teacher who cannot sing. Singing should happen all over the classroom, all over the home, all over our lives. It's pathetic how little singing happens in our society, and it's usually atrocious. You've all been at a restaurant where the birthday party breaks out and singing happens midway to you, and it's most likely cringeworthy. You know, you might be feeling like you should join in and help them find their tonal center, right? Shouting is not singing, and do not allow your students to confuse or conflate them. Do not praise them for ugly singing. Develop a discerning ear for beautiful singing and work to bring it out of your students. Make it second nature that students sing by themselves. Students make the most progress this way. Sing for them, have them sing back. Don't try to carry them along with your own voice, rather require them to do the work. Coordination between the brain, ear, and body requires time, attention, and repetition. Encourage solo singing in small ways. Find the students who have the best intonation and tone and ask them to sing for the class. And in case you're wondering, a note about adult males singing with children. Just sing in your octave and they'll figure it out. And if they don't, tell them. But it is important for the changing male voice to know that there is an upper register to access, and so I also advocate for modeling that falsetto sound. I think it's beneficial for that age singer. And just sing a lot. The voice is a muscle that has to be used over and over again to strengthen and refine it. How do we know if our singing is getting better? What makes for good singing? As the teacher, I need to evaluate their singing, and they too need to be taught to evaluate their singing. On the most basic level, we require correct pitches, rhythms, and text. But do you require the right expression? Too much of school music instruction stops short of that most critical aspect. Vocal music is the only music that uses words. Are students communicating those words with the right expression? Or some days you might just take any expression at all? This is the realm of beauty. What makes for beautiful singing? I use these terms to shape my students' thoughts about music and hopefully also shape their actual music making too. We talk about tone, articulation, balance, blend, and intonation, whether in unison or in parts. Interpretation, expression, timing, and phrasing. All this talk about singing does not exclude instrumental music, but I think there needs to be a corrective of what is thought about as music education. It's focused too heavily on instrumental training and music reading without developing the inner ear and voice. So maybe you think piano lessons or learning the tin whistle checks the box of music education. But if a student begins instrumental instruction without the ear and vocal development, they do not learn to think musically. It would be as though you know how to type, but not how to form words and thoughts. Could you imagine that you can type words, but then you don't know what it says until the computer reads it back to you? Instrumental music should be done as an extension of the voice. Because before a child can appropriately hold, play an instrument, they can sing, and they should be singing. That's, before they come to school. A beautiful children's choir is one of the most satisfying musical experiences for the singer and the hearer. Give me a choir that's been singing for a year or a band that's been playing for a year. Which one is the more satisfying musical experience? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just right? Song leads us to movement. Music moves us. Mothers know this instinctively. Never have I seen a mother sing to a child and hold perfectly still. She sings a song and cannot help but pat and sway. It turns out, too, that those movements are critical to a child's development. Hearing song and making song leads us to movement. We might say that movement is making song with our bodies. Our voices are part of our bodies. Yes, movement inside the body, but we also need movement outside the body. Our students need movement exploration, dances, choreography, you know this term? Good choir directors know when you add a simple movement to your vocal exercises, it supports good tone and energy in the sound. It gives a spatial dimension, some geography, if you will, to music, that number in time. Movement explorations are especially important in the preschool years, but also delightful and important for older students and even adults if they can shake off their self-consciousness. It creates awareness of your body, sensitivity to musical expression. I recommend becoming familiar with the work of Dalcroze or Laban if you hadn't heard of them. Phyllis Weichert also wrote a lot of practical books on this, and Fire Robbins' book on movement explorations are great as well. If you can walk, you can dance. It's a natural thing to do, but also done quite unnaturally in our time. We dance because we are bodies. We dance because there is so much joy in it. Dancing gives us opportunity to honor and care for each other. We practice social graces. We learn how to be a partner, how to ask for a partner. We learn steps and terms, how to synchronize our bodies together. It gives us appropriate physical interaction and strengthens communal bonds. The groundwork for dance is laid with simple circle games, and when students can walk on the beat, they can successfully dance. Folk dances are a natural beginning, using English country dances found historically in the work of John Playford or Cecil Sharp. Today, you can find them in resources like the New England Dance Masters. Use also song dances and play parties. Now, you may not be familiar with this tradition. I wasn't before. I lived in Indiana. But it comes from the settlers of Ohio and Indiana who, to avoid prohibitions on dancing and playing instruments, developed a repertoire of games. They were not dancing. They were playing games. Which just goes to show how people need this kind of physical and social interaction. Preteens and teens especially need ballroom dance. They don't know it or they won't admit it. They rock, they protest, but make them do it and it becomes easier. And it is a marvelous thing to see young gentlemen and young ladies pair off and dance together. The room is in movement. Students synchronizing their bodies with the music and with each other. So let me turn to the category now of hearing song. Students need to hear classic works of the Western canon. Outside of the music classroom, this is analogous to what is happening in literature. We read great works of literature. Let us treat pieces of music in much the same way. Let us discuss the composer, his life, place, and time. Let the students see the composer and let him be a recognizable face. Humanize him. Laud what is virtuous, reprehend what is not. Let us talk about the music and what they heard in a similar way to asking for a narration. In the beginning, it might be imaginative ramblings, but in time, they learn to hear instrumentation, meter, form, style. Of course, you'll have to teach them all that, but in time. Just let them listen and love it. I think familiarity in this case, if it's worthy of such repetition, does not breed contempt, but comfort and love. By listening to a piece again, it becomes comfortable. We find ourselves in a place we remember and we're glad to be there. One resource for finding such pieces is the Ambleside Online Composer Studies. I've also liked using the Brummett Taylor Listening Program. And that is a non-directive approach, but it does begin to give ideas of things to listen for, while focusing mostly on repeated hearing. For my older students, though, I don't feel like that goes quite far enough. It's time for them to really hone their listening skills, to learn more terminology, some theory, concepts, because I want them to know how to talk about music. While they listen, I also want to encourage and teach my students concert etiquette. We talk about being a distraction and disturbing your neighbor's ability to listen. However, the younger students especially might need something for their bodies to do while they are listening. Keeping the beat on their body is an excellent option. Offering simple motions that enhance the form are also excellent. These are enjoyable for even the youngest students. I've done them in my infant, mommy, and me classes, as well as for the older students too. A great resource for this is a collaboration between the Martha Graham Dance Company choreography, Peggy Lyman, and John Fireoven called Move It. They are beautifully and joyfully done, and they are graded so you can use the developmentally appropriate movements for your students. During COVID shutdowns, many teachers put videos of themselves leading these type of things on YouTube, which is another great way to find them. You can also feel free to choreograph them yourselves. I hope to foster a love of listening to music in my students, that they might be patrons of musical arts in the future. Now to folk music. Students should also hear folk music. Many folk songs have been made into storybooks, and this is an especially enjoyable way to sing to your students. A good delivery is crucial. It's that fourth element, right? The rhythm, the pitches, the rhythm, the words, the expression, delivery. This is akin to read aloud time. Tell a story with your voice and make it enjoyable. It's worth mentioning the Chloride hymn books here. If you don't know them, you should. They're here. You can buy them all. I think they fall into this category. If folk music is music of the people, then as people of the church, hymnody is our folk music. More on folk music hymnody connections later. Now to reading song. Reading is really important to me. I think it is to you too. We all want our students to be able to read. How did they get to that point? As an infant, they learned to make sounds. They learned to put the sounds together to form words, and we read to them. We read to them a lot. We talked to them a lot. They develop sentences, and then they talk to us a lot. But they talk for years before anybody says, you know that sound that you know? Well, here's what it looks like. When you see this on the page, then say, and so it begins. A child begins to organize the sounds he already knows through his ear into something he can see with his eye. In music, we say that sound comes before symbol. And yet, when it comes to music education, most people have not been taught with that same process. Most music teachers didn't learn that way and have not been taught to teach that way. If you've been in a choir setting, how did you learn to sing choir? Did you have to hear it first, either from the teacher or the piano? Is it good enough if the students can learn to sing a song by rote? Is that our goal in reading books to our children? That they can parrot them back to us? I mean, no, it's part of their formation for sure. Right? Retelling a story, narration is a good skill. But no one wants to have their child have to have others read everything to them the rest of their lives. They want them to read themselves. And that's what I want. Let's make sure students can read music notation. Some might start students on an instrument right away so they learn how to read music. Okay, so you see this dot here on the page, you got the lines and the spaces, and when it's right here, then play this key. Okay, that one's called middle C. So now they know all the terms, the notation. They can tell you that the key of C has no sharps and flats, the treble clef is here, the bass clef is here, the note names, the spaces, the lines, but you put a page of music notation in front of them and ask them what they say, what it sounds like. Can they hear it in their heads? Can they sing it? In order to teach my students to read music independently, my students use syllables to denote function in music, both in pitch and rhythm. For pitch, we use solfege, devised in the 11th century by Guido di Arezzo. For rhythm, we use the Gordon cross-eyed syllables built on the work of Kodai and others. These syllables do the best job of showing rhythmic function, in my opinion, but there are others. I follow a curriculum called Conversational Solfege by John Feyerabend, which I highly recommend to you. It's the best thing I found, and it isn't really a curriculum. It's a methodology. And it allows the teacher to choose the musical material, which means I can make it fit my context and yours too, classical living school. There are teacher training classes all around, even offered online. But for today, I want to give you a quick overview of how I use it to teach students to read notation. Once students show signs that they are ready for reading, that is, they have a rich background of song, they can match pitch, they can keep a steady beat, and they are expressive in music. It's usually around 2nd grade or age 7. Then we begin the 12-step process outlined in the curriculum. There are 4 categories to this process, and the first category is called readiness. And it's only one step entitled rote. I'd like to walk through this process twice with you, once on rhythm and once on tones. So here at this step, students need to all be familiar with some music, or it could be a rhyme for them. It's the rote stage. I need them to all know some music or some rhyme and know it really well. In this category, I'll have to spend a few class periods introducing this and familiarizing them with it, unless there's something they know already. One thing I love about this curriculum is that it gives you a lot of wonderful options for repertoire, but it works just as well with your own. I love giving my students classic folk repertoire, but I also love using song for church. And so my students already know the Kyrie from the hymnal, you do too. So I'm going to use that now to walk you through the process. So we sing, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. Lovely. Step 1 is accomplished. You know the list. Step 2 through 5 fall into the category called conversational solfege. And here is where we train the ear. And we want to do that before training the eye, because if we train the eye first, it will dominate and inhibit the ear development. This is why freshman year of college was so hard for me. Okay? Step 2 is now rote pattern repetition. So would you keep a steady beat on your body and just repeat after me? Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so these are patterns. Right? I'm using rhythmical concept. Now repeat after me. Same, keeping a beat. Do, day, do. Do, day, do. Do, day, do. Do, day, do. Did you notice that each time you said do, you landed on the beat? Yes, that beat landing is called do. And did you notice what came in between the beats? We said day. So when we divide the beat in half, we get day. We have special musical words to tell us about rhythm, do and do day. I call these rhythm syllables. And this is step 2. Okay, step 3, still in the conversational category, is decoding the familiar. So remember the Kyrie from Matins? I'm going to take away the words so we can just think about it on rhythm. Could you keep a steady beat while I sing on a neutral syllable? I'm going to say bum. And while I do, see if you could imagine do and do day. Steady beat. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. do and do day inside your head while you imagine that song. So the room is going to be silent for just a minute. Ready and go. Now let's sing the rhythm syllables out loud, and hopefully they're the ones you heard in your head. Ready and go. Do-day, do-day, do-do. Do-day, do-day, do-do. Do-day, do-day, do-do. If most students indicate to me that they can hear in their head, and it might take a long time for students to develop that inner ear, then I know that I'm ready for step 4, which is decoding unfamiliar. So let me share a pattern that you've never heard before. Could you echo it back to me? Bum 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 bum.
Bum, 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 bum.
So now, taking those bumps, can you try putting the syllables, the do and the do days that you know, to that pattern? I'll say it and you think about it. Bum 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 bum. Did you say it on the syllables? Ready and go.
Do-day, 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 do-day.
Yes. Accuracy with decoding unfamiliar tells me students are ready for the final step, conversational step, step 5, creating. So could you create your own 4-beat pattern? I'll go first. Do, do-day, do, do-day. I'll keep the beat here and you put whatever you want on those beats. It will sound like a big mess, but we're practicing, okay? Ready and go.
Do-day, 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 do-day.
So that's kind of the thing that I'll do. I like to assess this as students are leaving the classroom because one by one they can walk by me and quickly do that for me, and it's like a one-on-one time without in front of everybody, and it goes by very easily. So once students can manipulate the rhythms and create their own, they're ready to jump into the reading categories, steps 6 through 8. This ensures that the ear and inner ear are adequately prepared to assign a visual symbol to this musical meaning. Step 6 is when I show the students the symbol for the oral concept that we've been using. So here's a flashcard. So this step is called note rote reading. Here's the symbol for do. And students might know that it's called a quarter note. That's fine. It's not terribly important at this stage. And here's the do day, and students might know that those are 8th ones, and that's fine. But repeat after me, please. Do,
Do, day, do.
repeat after me. Do, day, do, do.
Do, day, do, do.
Okay, so here's where this is the rote part. You'll get your chance in just a second. Step 7 is decoding something unfamiliar. So now they're going to see I didn't want to bring a ton of cards. So something different now, or something familiar. So yes, you know this one. Okay, so now you say it without me telling you.
Do, day, do, do.
Right. So we began with the Kyrie, and at this step, I would have them get out their hymnals, and I'd show them the notation and have them read it right from the hymnal. They already know it, and they're reading something they know. Assessing for accuracy, then they're ready for step 8, which is decoding unfamiliar material. In Feierabend's curriculum, he offers a wealth of classical music, both folk music, American and European, some global things. But I pull from the hymnal as much as I can. I think it's a great resource for these reading stages. After all, to me, the hymnal is the folk music of the church. In the hymnal, there are hymns and liturgies they know and ones they don't. So I love that they get to dig around in the hymnal and use the ones they know to learn the music even better, and use the ones they don't to teach them to read better. The next category is writing. Feierabend offers a listening example at this stage, connecting the simple musical idea to masterwork level pieces. So in this case, one of the options is Offenbach's familiar can, which Saint-Saëns uses as the music slowly of the turtle in the Carnival of Animals. Long I can switch to do 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 do. Right, so I just love that now music isn't this mysterious divine sent gift per se, that it is a gift, but it's not like unknowable or uncreatable for them. I spend most of the conversational category, or most of my time in that conversational category. And once that's in place, reading falls into place very easily. But I spend a good amount of time on that too. Here at writing, I spend the least amount of time. I do think it is important, however, because there's an idea out there, and I had it as a kid, that in order to write music, you have to have divine inspiration. That the heavens have to open and God sings you a song. I want to expose all my students to writing music. I want to foster the idea that writing music is a craft anyone can learn and study and get better at, just like students have to learn to write essays and get better at that. Compositions don't have to be of masterwork magnitude. A lot of simple compositional work is everyday work for the church musician. Only the Lord knows, but maybe I'll encourage a future composer for the church. So steps 9 through 12 usually happen for me on one piece of paper. This is also how I'll do a final assessment of the material. So step 9 is copy work. I'll have on the top of the page something that I want them to reproduce in a similar way to handwriting. I ask them to pay attention to stem direction and note head size and the like. Then, step 10, they'll have to write something familiar. So by this time, they've mastered several pieces that fit this focus, and I ask them to recall a portion of a song or a rhyme and notate it. And then step 11 is something unfamiliar. If you took college level music courses, then you'd be familiar with this as dictation. Students listen to something that I play or sing for them, very short, and they decode it with their inner ear, and then they notate it. Step 12 is the culmination of musical thinking. Can you write an original musical thought? Doesn't have to be profound. I begin practicing this by making a phrase and then asking students to finish it with insert parameters, like we did with 4 beats. Can you create for me a 4-beat, I call it fire up in this, answer to my question. So if I say, do, they, do, on the paper, I've notated that for them, ask them to write me an answer to that. And depending on what we're working on, right, it might have to do with note durations, pitches, or rhythms. As students mature, the parameters expand. So now you've seen how this works for a rhythmic concept. And I want to point out that this is only part of the curriculum. I may be focusing on just a few steps each lesson. I might be preparing something coming up. I might be practicing with techniques and musical themes for the steps we're currently working on, and I might be reviewing a previous step. Sometimes a whole unit could take just a few lessons. Sometimes it can take months. My goal is mastery of these concepts since they will build upon each other. So let's try to breeze through a unit on tones, pitches now, so you'll see how it follows the same steps. So we start with the first tonal unit, do, re, mi. Step 1, readiness, rote. For many months, maybe even years, I've been using these little patterns for students to echo. So I'll say, bum, 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 so on. I've also been playing a musical game with them called Closet Key. This song goes, I have lost my closet key in my lady's garden. I have lost my closet key in my lady's garden. Little game, you have a key, you hide it. It's hot, cold, how close they are to finding the key. Yeah? So I introduced the idea now at step 2 of solfege syllables. Do, re, mi are musical words we use to talk about tones, just like we use musical words to talk about rhythms. So repeat after me now. Mi, re, do. Mi, re, do. Do, re, mi. so on. So step 3 is the familiar. We played that game Closet, and so you know that song. If I took away the words, could you imagine what the solfege would be? I'll sing it on a neutral syllable bum, and you try to imagine in your head and see if you can hear the do re mi's. Bum 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see if you can try hearing them in your head with nothing in the room. Ready and go. Step 4 is unfamiliar. This is a song I'm banking on. It's maybe unfamiliar to you. Hey, do, do, and let us go dreaming. Hey, do, do, come dreaming with me. If I took away the words, could you imagine what the solfege would be? Bum, 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 bum. Feeling brave? You do it? Okay. It starts on which syllable? Correct. Let's try. Mi, re, do, do, re, do, re, mi, do. Mi, re, do, do, re, mi, re, do. Step 5, can you create a 4-beat pattern using do, re, and mi? So you got 4 beats, 4 options. Make your choice, what you want to start on. It goes in each spot. Ready? Here we go. How about we all start on do so we feel nice and sure. Make sure your first note is do, and you get to decide for the rest. Ready? And go. Do, re, do. Okay, so same idea. Simple. Step 6 is rote reading. So here's where I show them a staff. A staff is 5 lines and 4 spaces where we hang our notes. And we're going to call this spot on the staff do. See how there's no line going through it? This note here we'll call re. See how there's a line going through it? This spot here, mi. So I would give them patterns to read, right? So this is my first pattern that I sang to you. Right? So now we can sing it on mi, re, do. Okay, so you get the idea. I give them just the note heads at first, no rhythm. We add the rhythm later, and we figure out the pitches and then add the rhythm. Step 7 is reading familiar. So here's, I'm going to show them the notation for the game Classic Key. And I'll also point out that the preface from Divine Service 3 that they know, Lord be with you, right, is also do, re, mi. And we'll use that too. Step 8 is reading unfamiliar. So then I'm going to show them patterns and music from things in the hymnal that maybe they don't know, but that's going to use do, re, mi. And again, there's a listening example. Bizet has a piece from Lutheran suite called the Carillon Ostinato. And so there's a carillon in the piece, or an imitating a carillon, that just goes and then the rest of the piece happens underneath that whole ostinato the entire time. So all the way through, the children can sing mi, do, re, mi, do, re, and they have this connection to a masterwork level piece. And then step 9, again, 9 through 12 are the writing components. Where first the rote, write exactly what I wrote, and then write something that you already know, writing familiar, pretend. Write something unfamiliar, where I'm going to tell you, I'm going to dictate to you something by voice or instrument for you to write down. And then 12, creating your own. So We finished our overview of reading, so allow me to summarize my practical points so far. We make song, students are singing, but also making music with instruments and embodying music through movement and dance. We learn about hymns and all sorts of basic music vocabulary. We hear song, students listen to great music and talk about it, and also folk music. We read song. Students learn to read music notation, first with their inner ear and then with their eye. Through all this, they are doing music and learning about music and enjoying music because God has given us the gift of music. And he has made every single one of us musical people to sing his praises. I'd like to turn now to the culture portion and tell you a little bit about the culture at our school. And that's Redeemer Classical School in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Singing is happening all over the place, not just in music class. And it's so joyful to be a music teacher there because of it. Students sing each morning in matins or divine service, whichever is occurring that day. In addition to singing liturgy and hymns, they sing during matins. They are working through the Psalter every day. Students sing folk songs and hymns in their classrooms as part of their memory work every day. Teachers begin singing a signal song on the playground and all join in as they come back in from recess. History teachers use listening examples and listening guides to add cultural context to their history studies. Students sing while they work at the end of the day to clean and tidy, preparing the classrooms, bathrooms, and hallways for another day of learning. Students sing grammar songs. And finally, students sing a hymn to depart at the close of the day while they walk out. Our high school students go on shut-in visits with our pastor, and they sing for and with our members there. Singing permeates the culture and life of our students, and I hope beautifully shows them that music is a human activity meant for each of them. It is a God-given gift meant for their flourishing as Christian people and for the edification of their neighbors. Dance also plays a good part in our school culture. We enjoy dancing. Twice a school year, we have a family folk dance evening where the students can dance with their families, sharing some of the dances we have learned in music classes, and they can also demonstrate their ballroom dance work that they have done. Our students practice ballroom dance a few minutes before lunch most days. As Lutherans, who are known as the singing church, we are well poised to grasp this musical culture because we have a musical culture. We have something there, unlike a lot of what's out there today. We have a folk music, a common body, music, and a hymnody. What kind of musical ground do most Americans have outside of church? Happy Birthday, the Star Spangled Banner, you can remember all the words, Amazing Grace, Incy Wincy Spider. It's pretty scary. Dr. Feyerabend recounts that when he first started teaching graduate students in musicology, he would send his students to nursing homes and assisted living communities to collect songs and rhymes. In musicology speak, this is called field research. They would ask the residents to tell them a song or rhyme that they would do with a young child. In the beginning, many different songs and rhymes were collected by the students. But after just a few years, students were not able to collect much, and they were all collecting the same things, like This Little Piggy Went to Market. And I was amazed to learn that This Little Piggy Went to Market is just one of a plethora of rhymes like it, that there's a whole genre of finger or toe-wiggling rhymes. So many of these oral, musical, and rhythmical traditions could have been lost. And I think it's something that classical schools, who are about good and true and beautiful things, should be fostering in their cultures and families' lives. Similarly with what I'm teaching in music class, I could just sing hymnody and liturgy, but I don't. In your literature classes, you could just be reading the Bible, but you don't. I think there is a culture, both churchly and secular, that we should be preserving and passing on. For the most part, our students know a lot of hymnody because they were raised in the church. Thanks be to God. It is a beautiful thing. It makes teaching conversational solfege so rich, and I can draw upon these tunes the children have grown up with and know well and use them to teach about music, orally and visually. They don't really know children's folk music, and I didn't really know it either growing up. I guess I had the We Sing song cassette tapes, and maybe children today are listening to Rafi or something. I don't know, but you know this. In our day and age, we are consumers of music. We get it from a recording, a video. Music is done at us. Where in the world today do everyday normal people get together around music, hopefully printed notation no less? The only place I know of is the church. And so in closing, I've shared how I put together a music education curriculum I believe is classical and Lutheran. I think it's imperative to pass on the ability to read music. I want our church pews and lofts filled with singing people, but I also want students who are musical and faithful to pass on that musicality and faithfulness to their children or children in their adult lives. To be fathers and mothers who sing to their children. Tuneful, beatful, artful, and in all, faithful. Thank you for your time and attention today. I've left my email address here. If you'd like to get in contact, I'd be happy to share any resources with you via email. And I don't know if we have any time for questions or discussion. Okay. Go ahead.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay. Yes.
I have a question. I have noticed this, that my students don't know nursery rhymes, right? And then our reading methods, we learn that students must learn nursery rhymes to learn to read.
Cindy Rollins is a huge, she's a huge proponent of nursery rhymes.
So I try to incorporate music into my class. I'm not a music teacher. But when I'm giving a spelling test with the words, I'll quote scripture if the word is in it. I'll quote poems that children know. I'll try to quote nursery rhymes, and they don't know them. So is it too late at 3rd and 4th grade to be teaching them nursery rhymes? Should I focus more on like longer folk songs? Or just like the little nursery, is that still valuable for them?
I think it's still valuable. Yeah, if they don't know them, they should know them, no matter what age it is. Like with my littles at home, right, we read from Mother Goose all the time on the couch, but probably don't want to do that with your 3rd and 4th graders. So you want to invent some way of incorporating that into your classroom in another way. And I'm sure we can all brainstorm some ways to do that, but I think that's great.
And I see these little things and they're fascinated. Because maybe one student will know this one and another student will know that one, right? And how do you know these things and I don't? And then when you're talking about folk songs, I'm not sure that I know that many folk songs that I can share. So where can I go to find more?
And I would say that an easy place to go is Ambleside online again. They have Ambleside online. Amble, A-M-B-L-E-S-I-D-E. Ambleside, yeah. That's the name of the town of Charlotte Mason had her teacher college. They have folk songs on there. And your library's going to have plenty of collections of folk songs. But for our classroom teachers, select those and then they're memorizing them in their classrooms. I think they probably get together and talk something about how it fits into history too, which history cycle they're working on. Ambleside, A-M-B-L-E-S-I-D. Ambleside. Amble's the name of the town in England. Ambleside is the name.
You had mentioned that it's a book or a Christian pedagogy. Who was that by?
Edward Kaler.
Taylor.
He made a name that it's Koehler.
Oh,
I saw there was a review of it in the last issue of the journal that Dr. Mrs. Lee did. It's published by CPH. Yes.
You mentioned the Kodai method. Is there a new revised publication? Because it seems to be very old, so that it's more adapted to our nowadays needs.
Well, I would say that John Feierabend is trying to take what Kodai did in his country, right? So he doesn't start with so mi, because Hungarians have music that goes so mi. American English speakers, we do not. We have music that goes do re mi. So he started with do re mi in that. But in terms of what Kodai did as being happening long ago, I mean, I think that's part of the beauty of what we do as classical educators is there are good things that we're building upon, right? So I don't think we need to change what Kodai was doing other than
But
say,
it changed just the adapted version, which is more not contemporary, but the style also has changed maybe. So the presentation, the way of presentation.
I think at its core, it's the same presentation, you know, of what the sound before symbol. There's Kodai education is still happening in choirs everywhere, right? Teachers are still learning and benefiting from that. So like Kodai music areas in America, things like that. OB, OAP.
Organization.
American Kodai Educators, there we go, yeah. That would be, I think that just, there's this kernel of truth about how we learn music, like we do language, and that's what Kodai brings to the table. But then he also brings the aspect of folk music, right? So we have to examine what is your musical culture, and that's, I think, Feierabend is a modern representation of those things. But me as a classical Lutheran educator, I'm bringing the repertoire that I want to use. Does that answer your question? So John Feierabend's books. Yes.
With folk songs, I've been really curious about the why when bringing it into the classroom, because I love to do it and I'm really interested in it, but I myself want to have in my mind, like, why do I do this? So like, other than kind of the connection with the history of the concept, what would you tell somebody like, you're right?
Because I think, because in literature, you don't just read the Bible or devotional materials, right? We're reading classical works. We're reading things that are not the Bible. And that's not to say that the Bible is the main thing, right? And I'm thankful that in my context, those folk songs are happening in their classrooms, so those very limited time I have them in music. I'm going to be using the folk songs as a way to teach them the music literacy portion that I want to have. And I would say is the question, if I do this, what gets falling out of what I'm already doing? I think the answer to why I would do it has to do with just modeling off of what's happening in literature, but then also preserving that culture. Like if we are going to love our neighbors, then like we might need to be the ones going forward who preserve this secular culture because it's good and wholesome, to share it even with a non-believing world. So,
Yeah.
yes.
If I could just piggyback on that question and what you said, because I'm familiar with the Feierabend books and the folk music. The reason the folk music is an integral part, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the reason the folk music is an integral part of the music education is because the music reflects the language and the culture. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Is that you have some of the cadence and some of the tonalities that go with our Western culture.
I mean, and they're different beats than hymns.
Yep.
I mean, I love hymns and I love all the rah of hymns that we're talking about. But that is one, albeit very important, genre type of music. There are other courses to be had that isn't the main course, but still enriching.
Tend to be simpler
Like they can be really simple, folk songs can be, and they can be strict too, but also they can be silly, like, I don't know, like, you have fun.
Which is not appropriate for church,
So
but
it's
it's
like,
part of who we are.
you know, you can have fun, silly, do fun, silly games with them, whereas not much church music.
Others? Yes.
A key component of classical education is imitation of masters. And the idea being, if you do what they did, you'll get what they got. So I'm having a hard time coming up with an example of musical masters worthy of imitation for whom the kind of classroom education in music you're describing was their path of formation. And from a historic background in Lutheran music education, there was a very distinctive shift in the end of the 19th century that the musical activity done in Lutheran schools was unquestionably catechesis. But the question that got raised, especially when others were looking at the silver vedettes that were coming out at the beginning of the 20th century, but is it actually music education? So I'm just a little confused about I don't necessarily see Bach doing ballroom dance to learn how to be tuneful people. So, but he's the master we look at. So, could you square that circle for me, please?
Very quickly, it looks like we're at over time. So, I would say Bach did learn to dance. Did he learn how to dance in his school? I don't know. Probably not. I would say Bach learned to hear and think musically. Did he learn it in his school? I don't know. But I know that if I don't do it now, if I don't do it in my classroom, I don't know when my students will do it. Is that fair?
Fair.
All right, thank you.